This Ohio State loss is completely inexcusable. I'm just going to flat out tell you exactly how I feel. When I watch this game, I watch these teams, have seen all 11 games for the Ohio State Buckeyes this year in some form or fashion, have watched Michigan probably at least 8 times this season, and just evaluating their performance, watching the game tape, watching it live, what have you. And my goodness, this one is very difficult to wrap your head around. And I think a lot of Ohio State fans are fair in saying that this is the worst loss of their lifetime. And doesn't really matter how old that person is. It might be a newborn that was born on November 26th to an Ohio State family. This is the worst loss of their lifetime. Because I can look at their losses in the last 3 years and I can live with it because I looked at the personnel that Michigan had and the identity that Michigan had, and it was understandable why Ohio State was maybe bludgeoned a couple times. It makes sense, but this one is completely inexcusable, especially for a team that had won 17 out of 19 between 2001 and 2019. They were their own worst enemy. It was hard to really wrap things up, and thinking that this game could go the way it went. We kind of told you Ohio State would have to screw it up, and boy, did they ever. Good news is Michigan almost screwed it up as well. So it was not the most appealing game as far as just watching and the quality is concerned. We'll start with the quarterback play. Will Howard, couple of really bad interceptions. Okay, a couple of really bad ones. The one that they threw out to the right, intercepted, taken back inside the 5-yard line. Their kicker, Jaden Fielding, misses a couple field goals. Just, it's easy to point to individual plays, say that's why this happened, that's why this happened. It makes sense because this did this and who did that, what have you. But let's start with the game plan. And this one falls on the staff. It does. I watched the tape, and now have drawn even stronger conclusions than I had even yesterday after the initial glance at it. What I'm trying to figure out is that we know that Ohio State has offensive line challenges. That's a fact that's been established. We know that because they've had multiple injuries to the position. So why on 26 offensive plays are they going to run the ball in between the tackles for the most part? 26 different offensive plays, most of those runs hitting between the tackles. The exact position group that has given Ohio State the most challenges this year, the offensive line. Let's lean on them. They'll win us this game. And then it's a refusal to acknowledge the strength of Michigan's team, their defensive tackles, the 2 best players on their roster. Yep, we'll run right at them. Surely that'll catch them off guard. How many times did we see Judkins or Henderson just run right between the A-gaps, slamming right into the middle of the offensive line? As a result, 16 of the 26 plays that I referenced went for either negative yards or 0 or 1 yard, basically. I mean, more than 3/4 of those runs went for 2 yards or less, which means they kind of always were living a little bit behind the sticks, and it kind of always meant that they were going to be in some difficult spots. What I also don't understand is when you are a team that has a pretty good offense and you're going against a team with a pretty average offense, why don't you try to force the tempo a little bit? Like, why didn't they use it? You look at the one time they used a little hurry up, the one time they kind of increased the urgency a little bit, that was there near the end of half, and it was perhaps their best offensive drive of the day. 6 of 8 through the year. They went for 58 yards. They went down and they score a touchdown right before the half. Like, why didn't they come out in the second half and say, hey, clearly our tempo stuff has given them some fits. Let's live with that a little bit more. And one thing that we've also acknowledged this year is that Michigan's secondary is just not very good, especially in the absence of Will Johnson. Why is it that they had several first downs inside the 25-yard line of Michigan, and they never really targeted, at that point, Jeremiah Smith? Now, they had a couple penalties that he drew. They did hit one for the touchdown, and that was significant. But why is it that if penalties and or touchdowns are going to be the result, why didn't they look in his direction more often? And how can you possibly justify a 0 target half for Jeremiah Smith. That was in the second half. Look, Will Howard is going to get a lot of blame for this. And while there have been moments this year where it's been a little bit inconsistent, there was occasionally some bad decisions. Yes, he did lose a fumble or two throughout the course of the year, but for the most part, he always bounced back. The first interception is a tough one to justify. Trying to hit Carnell Tate, hadn't really turned around. Amir Hall jumps in front of it, takes it to the 2-yard line. That was the only touchdown scored on the game for Michigan. You just can't give the ball to Michigan in the short field. You just can't under any circumstances. And I just don't understand for the life of me why you would lean so heavily on an offensive line that is without Seth McLaughlin at center and that was without Josh Simmons at left tackle. Ohio State's defense was stellar all throughout the season. 11 and a half games of outstanding defensive play with the exception of some big plays given up against Oregon, right? Well, here in this game, most important situation, most important game of the year because it was the rivalry game that's been circled for the calendar year, and they can't get off the field in the second half. You can't get off the field late in the game. And we've seen that multiple times where Ohio State's defense on the field, it's the star of the show, and Michigan runs it down their throat like they did in 2021, like they did in 2023, and they put the game on ice. It is one that is impossible to wrap your head around. It was a terrible performance from the Buckeyes and one that will pain Ohio State fans for many years to come. As far as Michigan is concerned, and look, I know a lot of people that are giving Michigan tremendous credit in this game. They deserve tremendous credit for their effort, and they deserve tremendous credit for dictating the way the game was going to be played. But this game was all about Ohio State. No disrespect, Michigan, no disrespect whatsoever, but this was all about Ohio State's ineptitudes because Michigan had several ineptitudes of their own, but Ohio State, as soon as Michigan made a mistake, Ohio State would say, hold my beer, and make one themselves. So great job. Mullings had the big run there at the end. That was significant. It was just really eye-opening to see how that game went. And if I'm the Buckeyes, I'm sick to my stomach about what was lost. Not just the game, not just a spot in the Big Ten title game, but the mental aspect of having to think for another 364 days about that performance and how you allowed Michigan to dictate terms would be something that'd be almost impossible to overcome. That will haunt those players and that coaching staff forever. I'm just telling you, they will never forget just how bad that performance was.